Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our STEMIEFest 2024. This session, we will be talking about STEM in Early Intervention 101, Must-Have Toolkit Essentials. I have my co-presenters with me. My name is Hsiu-Wen Yang. I am a technical assistant specialist with STEMI Center, which is the center that focuses on promoting and supporting all young children to learn about STEM. I am an Asian female. I have a black hair. I'm currently have a ponytail. I'm wearing glasses. I'm wearing white shirts. And I am letting my co-presenters to introduce themselves. Christine, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, welcome and thank you all for joining us today. My name is Christine Harradine. I'm also a technical assistant specialist with the STEMI Center. I am a white female. I have long brown hair, which is loose today. I wear glasses and I'm wearing a black shirt with white speckles on it. And I would like to turn it over to our third co-presenter. Sandy, take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sandy Orwig. I'm an occupational therapist. I've been in the field of early intervention for over 30 years. I'm a white female with brown curly hair. I'm wearing glasses and I have a green shirt on today.
Thank you, Christine and Sandy. Today, we want to start our presentation really by talking about an important mindset. In the past, adults might start planning their instruction or intervention based on what child can do. This often will lead to an adult has a low expectation for the child and unequal learning opportunities for all children. Therefore, it is important to start this topic by stating that our approach is grounded in a statement from National Association for the Education of Young Children that all children should have the right to equitable learning opportunities that enable them to achieve their full potential as engaged learners and value members of society, and this include infants and toddlers with developmental delays or disabilities. When we consider the support that we provide for each and every child, we should go beyond the general progression of development and learning and really consider how culture, experience, and individual strengths could be considered in children's learning and development. It is also important to note children are like adults, learn more when they're happy, they're excited, and motivated. Therefore, our support should also connect it to their interest and learning experiences. That's why we value the developmentally appropriate practice from an AUIC. So in this session, we will talk about how STEM learning in infants and toddlers could look like. And we will have a short overview of process of how we can connect individual family support plan and in early STEM. And also we will introduce some tools and resources that you could use right away in your practice. Okay, so first we will talk about STEM experience for infant and toddlers and how would that look like. So how, where, and when can we incorporate STEM learning opportunities? So STEM isn't just another initiative or expensive materials or a summer camp, but it is what children do every single day across their routines and activities. Children are curious learners. They learn through exploring the world, testing, hypothesizing, and making connection with their experience all the times. Opportunities for STEM learning can be incorporated into everyday routines and activities, and there's no need to buy expensive toys or toys. I will tell you why a little bit later. Like if your child like food, like my 6 month old son who just got exposed to solid food, And when he was eating food, feeding himself using spoon, he like put a little bit food in his mouth and drop his spoon after he put the spoon in his mouth. And what we could do to support STEM learning in this scenario, instead of saying, no, you can't do that, don't do that, we could find a way to incorporate STEM, like let him try dropping different things and talk about what is going on. Like, you drop a spoon and it make a loud noise. How about a washcloth? You drop it. Does it make sound like your spoon make it? Like, does it make a loud noise too? So have that kind of observation narrative and to help your child connect to the STEM learning and the real life experiences. So besides mealtime, you can also do that during bath times too. Perhaps you can find ways to talk about force and motion when they're splashing in the water with their hands. You can talk about, look at that big waves you're making with your hands. How can we make smaller waves? Can you make waves with your leg as well? So have those kind of connection with STEM learning during bath time. So there are so these are kind of just some example STEM learning opportunities that can be easily embedded in daily routines and activities. Can you think about other examples? I believe if you begin observe children's behavior with a STEM mindset, you will probably find that STEM learning is actually everywhere. So now we know how STEM could look like for infants and toddlers, but how can we use this learning opportunity to support children's different learning goals? So that's why I would like to start by introducing this framework. We know that working with early intervention, it is important to collaborate with families and partner with families. So this is a big foundation for all of the things that we mentioned here. And so in this graph, you can see that our first thing is really thinking about what's our children's interest, what's their strength. And we are going to talk a little bit of this each component in detail later. But here I was just going to briefly give you an overview of what that framework could look like. So we will start building the STEM learning opportunities, start creating STEM learning opportunities, building on children's interests and strengths, and what's the children's or families' preferred routines. And thinking about this, how the STEM learning opportunities could also embed into children's IFSP learning goals and what adaptation might be needed. What are some specific individualized instructional strategy that we need to include as we plan and providing opportunities to support children's STEM learning while also thinking about supporting their IFSP goals. So we are going to dig into further of each of this in a little bit. But this is overview what we're thinking about how you can think about supporting children's STEM and also IFSP goals all together. So in the beginning, we talk about children's learning connecting with their experiences, personal characteristic, strengths. So let's use this information to build our support for children's STEM learning. So once we start awareness that STEM can be everywhere, that we could start thinking about what they're currently thinking, what their current STEM thinking is, and what are their interests. So we can start by observing their interests, what get them excited, what get them laugh, what get them smile, motivated to do things. We can start by doing this observation, and you will notice that every child could have a different interest. Some child could like stone, like my niece. Some child could like dinosaur, or some child could like balls. So building on those interests and use this interest to support children's STEM learning. But how do we know? How do we know about how can we understand children's interests and developments? When we observe children very carefully as they engage to explore their environment and the materials they come in contact with, we can get a clues to what they might be thinking. And children give us signs, give us signals, facial expressions, really pay attention. We can really pay attention to what the children do, what the children say, communicate always to help figure out what they're thinking about. And you can also gather those information from families as well. If you wear the lens that help you figure out kids thinking, then you can meet them where they are, wherever that might be, and help guide them to what comes next in terms of their learning and thinking. So yeah, so these are just some of the points that I just talk about. Observe carefully with their facial expressions, their signal, their cues, and pay attention to what they say, communicate, and use a new lens to think about what they currently do, what they currently think, and when we start figuring out how our child is thinking, and it's everything about strengths, right? It's what they can do. It's a strengths based. It reminds us what a child can do. Like he can hold a toy with both hands, and like fish, how can I get him to notice object permanence when I cover the fish with a ball, with a towel? And then can I help him to think about how he will move the towel to try to see if the fish is still there? It's just some example that I, provide as I think about my son's development. So yeah, so if you shifting your mindset, really start everything thinking about child's strengths, child's ability, and how you provide your support. It might be different, could be different as well. So in the beginning, we also talk about you can collaborate with family to gather information about children's interests and strengths to build STEM skills. So we have this wonderful resource about All About Me. So this is the All About Me form that you can send home with the child, and families can provide that information in terms of, what are children's favorite things, what are their favorite activities, and from a strengths-based lens about what they're really good at. They're really independent, they're really energetic, and not instead of going to a deficit lens, like what they cannot do, right? And then we can also gather information from the parents about what they really need help with, what are their goals. So on the screen, if you are interested in using that tool in your work, you can use this QR code with your smartphone, with your iPhone or Android phone right now, or iPad, and you can get the resource right away. Or you can also get to the link, which we also include the resource link in the handout, which will be provided in the STEMIEFest website schedule. All right, so next things, Christine will help us talk about how do we notice children thinking.
Thank you, Hsiu-Wen. So what we believe is that children's thinking follows a path, just like physical development and speech and other skills in learning. Thinking, STEM thinking, follows a predictable path that all children follow. It starts foundational, so you start sort of at the base of thinking. You start at the foundational levels, and then as the children learn more, they move along and develop more sophisticated thinking as they travel the path. And in order to figure out where children are, we start with observation, like Hsiu-Wen shared with us. We observe, we watch children's reactions in all manner, their facial reactions, their bodies, their any language that they might use, any way that they might choose to communicate. So you watch and you take in what they're doing, and then we help them along this path and sort of scooch them and support them into moving along the path into the next level. So learning trajectories, which is what we call this approach, has three parts. And the first part is the goal. And the goal is where you are hoping to go. So this goal is grounded in content knowledge of the topic. So we could be talking about science or technology or engineering or math. And to be honest, it's also the way we think about physical development and speech language and the things that you are doing with your children in your early intervention services. The second part of the learning trajectory is the developmental progression. And this starts with where the children are now. So you figure out what they can do, where their strengths are, And then you successively build and scaffold their learning so they move along to the next progression. And the third piece, which is really important, which is what you do with your intervention instruction, is to guide them and scaffold them to individualize the activities that you're working on within the daily routines and activities. So essentially, you can STEMify what you're doing already by scaffolding their thinking as they go. We want to give you a real example of what this looks like. I wanted to set the stage so we know what we're going to be experiencing here. We have a little friend in a museum center who has a caregiver with him and an adult who's interacting with him. And the child is going to be holding a ball, a clear ball that has some stuff in it. And the adult is going to be interacting with the child and narrating what is happening, what she is doing, what the child is doing.
Yes, I see your ball. What you gonna do? What you gonna do? Watch. I shake. I drop. Should I do it again? I'll drop it. Drop. What do you think? You gonna drop it? Are you gonna drop it? 2, 3, drop. You gonna drop it? Oh, you did it! Good job.
So if we were really paying attention to what the child was doing, the child was noticing and paying attention to what the adult was doing with her ball to start with, right? She shook it and she narrated what she was doing. She said, I shake. And our little friend looked up and looked at the ball and saw it moving and saw the bits inside moving. And then our adult said, I drop. And she very suddenly dropped the ball. And we're assuming we can't see the ground, but we're assuming it bounced on the ground. And the child was really paying attention to this. He was watching. And then she did it again, didn't she? She narrated that she was going to do it again. So she dropped it again. And his little reaction was, ha ha! So he was really tuning into the fact that this ball was moving, was doing things. So if we think about what the child might be thinking in terms of science, we think about force and motion. We have these learning trajectories that we spent 5 years or so developing for STEM, for science and for technology and for engineering. And we tried to break down the paths that we think happen as children learn these topics, as their thinking develops. So in this case, as we took in all of those observations that we had of what the child was doing, we would say that this child was probably a motion noticer, which means that he was able to notice that objects were moving. The ball was moving, the things inside the ball were moving. He might also be moving toward the next level of thinking, which would be motion recognizer. And he gave us some clues that he might be understanding what was and was not moving, right? He watched the ball as it dropped, and then he dropped it, and then the ball stopped moving, didn't it, on the ground or in the tray where he dropped it. So as you're working with children to STEMify and to sort of sneak STEM into the things that you're doing with them in an everyday routine or activities that are going on around you that you're doing anyway, you can watch for where the children's thinking is developing. There are lots of other examples of our learning trajectories on our website, and we're not going to work through all of them today. Obviously, that would be a whole other session, and it would be a very deep dive into things. So we really encourage you to check out our website to look at some of these and to try to figure out how you can sneak some STEM thinking into what you're already doing with the children.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Christine, for giving us really detailed analysis on, how to observe children's behavior and performance, and how would that connect to children's STEM thinking. So that's a really great way to provide an example for the things I'm going to talk about here, right? So in the video, we notice children thinking, but what else we can support children, what else we can do to support children's STEM learning? Right. In that particular video, we noticed that adult is providing opportunity for children for that little girl to notice that the ball drop. So the provider is provide opportunity for children to notice what is going on and happening. So that is one way adult can support children's STEM learning, especially for the very young children. They are still exploring the world and notice what is going on. And the STEM vocabulary, the provider in the video, we just saw that they use drop, they use some vocabulary to connect to children's STEM learning experiences. But what else we can add to that STEM learning experience using words? We can also describing the characteristic or attributes of object, like the ball is round, the ball is is big. So those kind of the information will also help support children's STEM learning as well. And most importantly, open-ended question. Although young children are still, maybe they're still trying to learn how to communicate, but we can still use open-ended question, and we can provide that response, to help children connect to that experience. In the video, you would say, "What will happen?" And then we can provide that response to the children and help children to think about what will happen and connect to their real life experiences. So that's some of the opportunities and things we can embed in young children's STEM learning. So besides how to notice children thinking and how to move along the path toward the goals, some people will ask if there are specific trajectories for children with disabilities, and really there isn't. The most important, we really need to think about how to provide adaptation and individualizations to make sure all children can make progress toward the STEM learning goals. So at STEMI, the center, that we use a three-part approach to inclusion. So the first one, we really consider the environment, how we set up the room. Is the children who can reach all the materials? Can they move around in different centers? And how the activity is being done? Then we move forward and switch our attention to think about the materials. Do we need to make any modification to the toys, the books, material? Should we give a different size, different color to give children a different way, a variety of ways to engage with the materials? And finally, we will consider the instruction or guidance that adults offer. For example, we might have to add extra information, description, reducing the step, or narrating the child's engagement. Some child might need additional instructional support, like provide longer wait time to support them, to help them respond. So knowing this adaptation and teaching practice can go hand in hand, can help all children and other children. So we don't necessarily have to think about, oh, there's another special trajectory for children with disabilities. Actually, is how we as adults could provide support for access and for children to participate in all learning opportunities. All right. So after all the information you have heard so far, you're probably trying to figure out a way to use the information during your session. So we develop an action plan and reflection resource to help you think about and then draft all your idea in one place, and to really help you put your ideas into action. So on this handout, action plan and reflection, you will start by thinking about children's opportunities, children's learning goal, what's their IFSP goal, and then thinking about really the framework we just talked about, what's their interest, what's their preferred routine, and how we can bring everything together to support their STEM experiences. The vocabulary, what do we need to provide, what do we need to say, what open-ended question we could ask, what adaptation might be needed. And then the last things, coaching and reflection is also important part of the EI session. So on this handout, we also provide some coaching strategy to just help you, think about what are some of the coaching strategy would be ideal would be more ideal when you work with this particular families, and what's the reflection, after you work with this family, what's the family's reflection, what's your reflection when working with these families, and hopefully we can improve the process for the next sections and ultimately support children's STEM learning. So again, if you want to have this resource, you can use our QR code, which shows on the screen, or you can access the digital version using the link, which will include in the handout as well. All right, so I know Sandy have experience working with the families on embedding STEM into EI session. So we're actually going to hear from a real actual EI providers to really think about how to really note about how STEM and EI could go hand in hand. How would that look like? So Sandy, how do you prepare to work with families on embedding STEM into the EI sessions?
Thank you. I think I was initially excited about this whole idea, all these concepts, but I was kind of fumbling. I didn't really know how to do it. And so I know for me, what I felt was the best is I needed to learn myself more about STEM. So there are great resources that you'll learn about at the end of the session, and the resources you'll have access to. And I spent quite a bit of time understanding myself what the different areas of STEM were, so that then I could better try to add it into my coaching sessions with families, both virtually and in person. So I think that's probably the first thing I did was educate myself. So then I felt more comfortable gradually adding in ideas with families.
Thank you, Sandy. And I think that the action plan will actually really help, if you also start with this process, just gathering different information. And, some people are visual learners. So, putting everything on paper and really think about how would that look like visually. How do you communicate with families about the importance of embedding STEM in EI?
So what I've really found is I don't do it right in the very first maybe one or two sessions. I kind of get to know the family and the child, and that all about me form that you showed earlier. I think I do that in a way so that I then learn more about the child and the family. And then I start to I kind of slip in some words, and then I talk about what I just did and why I did that. So if we were playing with some cars on a ramp down a pillow or something in the home, I might add some words that maybe the parent wasn't adding, and then I'll talk about the value of STEM. And I might even say, have you heard about STEM? And most times families, especially if they have older children, they've heard about STEM. So I then just try to expand it and add into and expand how the family could incorporate some ideas.
Yeah, so it's not like forcing them to accept this idea, right? You incorporate in your practice and then gradually introduce them. That's a great idea. In what ways has embedding STEM in EI with families had a positive impact on them?
So I kind of look back to my first couple families. Now I do it, in fact, I do it probably more now, of course, than I did in the very beginning. But it's been great to watch families own this idea, and not everybody does. And I've used some of the resources that we'll talk about in a little bit. and watching them and listening to them expand and add in ideas and add in open-ended questions that they never did before, either when they're playing, maybe making smoothies in the kitchen with their child. It's been great to watch families grow and incorporate these ideas. That's what I have, and I think it's really helping the children have more ways to work towards their outcomes on the IFSPs. It gives the parents more strategies. And so I've enjoyed watching the families grow in this area.
Yeah, I really enjoy hearing that story too, especially hearing that families are intentionally embedding, the open-ended question and thinking about STEM learning opportunities in everyday, daily routine activities. That's great. And how about in what ways has embedding STEM in EI with family has a positive impact on you as an EI provider?
For me, I feel like we never stop learning. And so having done this for over 30 years, this is like another new thing that I've been able to add into my practice. And I like Christine earlier said that you said we sneak STEM into daily routines and activities. And I think I love being able to do that with families. I think I'm empowering and enriching their daily activities and that they're incorporating STEM for all of these different children that we see. I just love this idea of expanding what I already do and adding these concepts into daily routines and activities.
Yeah, Sandy, I like your perspective. It's not like extra things, right? It's just embedding what you're currently doing and then just a new approach, a new, not necessarily you have to new learn thing, but just with a different lens to think about how you provide your early intervention. Yeah, thank you for sharing, Sandy. So here are a couple of resources that Sandy was talking about early intervention cards for family. So the card is developing what was developed with a group of early intervention providers. So they test it, they review it, they try it out with other families to provide us feedback and to inform the content. So the essential idea of this early intervention card is to help support families, like what Sandy was talking about, to help family intentionally thinking about how you can embed STEM into the daily routine. So this card is ideal is we could after at the end of the early intervention session, we can just hand over the card to the family, say this is the activity you could try it out during the grocery shopping, and here are some possible words you can embed as you start shopping with your little one, and why we need to do that, and what open-ended question you can pose to just get family an idea to get started and some strategy. And at the next section, you could talk about, reflect with the family. How does that work with your little one, and some more idea to support children's learning goal by using this card. Like, for example, if the children's learning goal could be communication, how you can use this activity card to think about STEM, but also at the same time to support communication goals. So if you're interested in more resources like this, again, scan the QR code with a smartphone right now, or use the digital link, which will include in a handout as well. So Sandy, so maybe you could give us some ideas or your experience of engaged families in using the EI cards.
So I try to have them with me. There are many to choose from. So if you're maybe thinking you might do bubbles with the child, or your child has some fine motor skills and you're working on building and stacking, it's great to bring the cards out. I will look at it, even though I know what's on them now more than I used to. But I'll look at the words and some of the ideas on the cards, and then with the families that are really open and interested, I'll show them what I was just looking at and give it to them and say, here are some other ideas that you could now take and add to your play with cars and blocks and balls outside, inside, or if it's a really young person, we're doing bubbles. There's some really great ideas on the cards about bubbles. And I think it helps parents figure out, I'm going to call STEM talk. I know we're going to talk about that in a minute, but how to add in some words. And, so if we add more than, look at the bubbles, now there's more to add. And we're enriching every child's interaction with activities by using all these great ideas on these different EI cards.
Yeah, that is great. And then, yes, we are going to talk about another resource about everyday STEM talk. It's kind of pretty similar to like the family card, but also a slightly different too. So for this one, it's essentially to help family or help you to get started, right? So in the beginning, we will think about open-ended question. Oh, what should I say? What should I ask? What should I say will promote STEM learning? So this is like kind of beginner resource, like, what could I say? And you can help you get that, and hopefully can help you get started with have everyday STEM talk to support family, have everyday STEM talk with their child. So for example, there's an example of is getting ready, getting dressed. So instead of just putting on the clothes and trying to get out the door, we can talk about what the color of a shirt. The shirt has a stripe, purple, white, what comes next. So it kind of have to talk about pattern, which is the important concept of computational thinking. So if you are interested in more resource, again, scan the QR code, and we also have the link in the handout as well. So another great resources that you can use right away in your practice is more idea that you could embed or support family to embed STEM learning into different routine. So this one, we have a daily routine exploration, we have a meal times, we have bath time, we have dress time. So in this specific handout, we not only provide activity, we also provide more information about, what specific key STEM progression step that the children is learning in that specific activities. What are some ideas, general idea for adaptation, provide instruction. So another great resource to help you get started when you start thinking about embedding STEM in daily routines and activities. And you can add your ideas, add children's learning goal into this handout, and thinking about how you can add your own strategy, add families' culture experience into this handout, and use that and turn that into something that will be meaningful and useful to support children. All right. So last question, Sandy. So I know everyone probably in this session are pretty new to embed STEM in EI. So what advice do you have for others when embedding STEM in EI?
So I think now that we have all these resources, I think the first one on everyday STEM talk, that one, and what you just talked about, those daily routine explorations, I think those are great tools that as providers, PT, OT, speech, special instructors, those are resources for us first, so that it helps us expand our knowledge so that we can expand the family's ability to incorporate all these ideas into daily routines and activities, especially then linking it to all the different outcomes each of us are working on to support the family who are supporting their child. So I think those resources, and then of course the EI cards, but I think we need to get familiar first. And then I know for me, I like tiptoed. So I took force and motion as the thing that I tried to learn the words about when we're building and pushing and pulling and rolling down a hill, all these different concepts that we use and play all the time. I try to be able to expand my vocabulary, my narration, and a modeling, and then talking to the family about what I did so that they were hearing it and they could then try it and practice it. And again, what I loved is hearing them do that, just that. In another session, I hear them using some words that we talked about or using some things from the resources that I shared with them. So I think for early interventionists, it's just another tool in our toolbox to support families even more, support kids, and expand everything they're doing. And we're embedding STEM into everything they do, as well as linking all of their outcomes to all these daily routines and activities. So there are I think the resources at the STEMI website are just great.
Thank you, Sandy. I know a lot of providers coming to just want to get an idea, strategies, tool that you can use immediately right away. And we hope that the context we provide you could help you use or implement these resources more effectively. Yeah, thank you so much for coming to our session. And if you have any question about using the tools or using the resource, finding resource, feel free to reach out to us. But anyhow, enjoy rest of your STEMIEFest, and we hope to see you again in next STEMIEFest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.